You were also asked about numerous questions about the interview that you gave me, the statement you gave me when I went down to, and I apologize, me in terms of with an investigator too, down in Miami. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. West asked you about the fact that the state attorney's office from Jacksonville had been appointed by the governor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In terms of you found out that we were handling the case.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you agreed to speak to me, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in fact, as you stated, 2 cars went to a place where you were at, a friend's house, and we picked you up and took you down to take a statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You were pretty emotional at that statement, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Was it hard for you to talk about this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in that statement, you, as best you could, attempted to tell what you remembered?
I'm objecting now. This is the third in a series of leading questions. This is redirect. There should be direct questions rather than leading.
I'll be glad to rephrase it, Your Honor.
Thank you, Sustained.
You recall in that statement stating that, I'm sorry, the April 2nd statement that Mr. West asked you about, that Trayvon Martin was running away from the person?
Yes, sir.
And you also made reference that Trayvon Martin said the man described him as a creepy white...
Object that it is, well, at this point, beyond the scope of the cross-examination and not responsive to one of the issues raised during the cross. And it's also leading.
Overruled, and as to the first 2 objections, as to the leading, I will give a little leeway to get a frame of reference and then make sure your questions aren't leading.
Yes, Your Honor. My question is, do you recall Mr. West asking you that Trayvon Martin referred to the man that was following him as a creepy white cracker?
Yes, sir.
I didn't say that. That's a mischaracterization of the testimony.
I'm sustained because I think the words were creepy ass cracker.
I apologize. Were the words creepy, pardon my language, creepy ass cracker?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you recall Mr. West asking you about that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also, and to you, is that a derogatory, or is that the way people speak in your culture, your age group?
Objection leading. Suggesting an answer?
Overruled.
Yes, sir.
You also made reference at some point that Mr. Trayvon Martin also referred to the person also with the N-word. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when I say person, he's talking about the person that was following him, referred to using the N-word.
Yes, sir.
By the way, in that letter, may I post?
Yes, sir.
That letter, Defense Exhibit 17, you actually read it, Trayvon Martin's name is misspelled. Were you aware of that?
No, sir.
It's spelled T-R-E-R.
I object as leading.
Overruled.
It's spelled T-R-E-V-O-N. Were you aware of that?
No, sir.
You mentioned also, when asked by Mr. West about the statement that you gave to Mr. Crump by phone, correct? Was that by phone, just to make sure the record? You weren't there in person, or were you?
By phone.
Okay. And Mr. Crump did not ask you specific questions about certain items or certain questions that I asked you specifically on April 2nd. Is that correct?
Objection
Yes,
leading.
sir.
Overruled.
Did Mr. Crump ask you specific questions like I did?
No, sir.
You were asked by Mr. West in terms of what happened, and you recall in the interview that you gave me on April the 2nd, the statement you gave, you referred to the man approaching Trayvon Martin, and it sounded like a bump. Do you recall using the word bump?
Yes, sir.
Objection. I guess I don't quite understand what's going on here. Is this confronting the witness with her prior statement that he was present for?
What is your objection?
Well, it's leading, and it is improper impeachment. If anything, it's bolstering by a supposed prior consistent statement of some sort.
Overruled on all three.
Do you recall using the word bump in describing what occurred to Trayvon Martin?
Yes, sir.
For the record, do you still live, Mr. West asked you about meeting with two individuals from FDLE in Miami. You still live in Miami, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You were asked by Mr. West about the phone calls that you had with Mr. Trayvon Martin that day on February 26th. Would you agree that the phone records are the best records about that in terms of the length of the calls, whatever the times are?
Yes, sir.
Let me have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Do you have any recross?
Briefly, thank you, Judge. Ms. Gentile, you were born and raised in Miami, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you spoke English at home?
What age you talking about, sir?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Are you saying that English is your third language? That you spoke Creole and Spanish first?
I spoke 3 languages first. I learned how to speak 3 languages first, but Creole was the first one.
Does your mother speak English?
Not that well, sir.
Does she speak English?
Not that well, sir.
I understand she may have an accent or some limitations, but do you speak to her in English?
Sometimes, sir.
And if you're not speaking to her in English, you're speaking to her in Creole?
Yes, sir.
And your father, do you speak to him in English?
Yes, sir.
And when you went to school as a child, kindergarten, did you speak English at school?
Yes, sir.
And have you spoken English to your teachers and classmates in school up through today?
Yes, sir.
Are you claiming in any way that you don't understand English?
I understand you. I understand you. I do understand English.
My question is, when someone speaks to you in English, do you believe that you have any difficulty understanding it because it wasn't your first language?
I understand English really well.
You've spoken it all your life.
Yes, sir.
And there's nothing that I've said to you today in English that, or yesterday, that you haven't understood, correct?
No, sir.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is Mr. Delarionda said in reference to Trayvon Martin saying creepy-ass cracker and using the N-word, that people speak like that in your culture. Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Well, what culture is that where people describe other people as creepy-ass crackers?
Heard. A pervert.
Do you understand what I mean by the culture that you were raised in, the culture that
The
you live
area
in?
I was raised in, you trying to say?
Right. I'll say it this way. Do people that you live around and with call white people creepy-ass crackers?
Not creepy, but cracker, yeah.
So the creepy is the pervert part that you were talking about?
Yeah.
So forget that for a second. You're saying that in the culture that you live in your community, people there call white people crackers.
Yes, sir.
And do they use the N word regularly?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying, so did Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin referred to white people as crackers, correct?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay, thank you, nothing else.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
May Ms. Gentile be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. You may be excused. If the state will please call your next witness.
We're going to ask that you remain under subpoena.
Okay, we're going to have to, well, she's going to return to Miami. Will we have notice before she would be called back? The state's releasing them from their portion.
We would
If-
like a few minutes to proffer some testimony is what I'm thinking. It could be at the end of the day today, or it could be at another time later in the proceeding.
Okay. Then I need to know if the defense has any objections to her returning to her home and then bringing her back.
Well, could we do it at the end of the day? And rather than inconvenience the jury, just have Ms. Gentile wait until the end of the day? Or
Okay, if counsel will please approach. There's a brief matter that we need to take up outside your presence. Thank you for your patience. If you'll please put your notepads face down on the chair and follow Corporal Dents out of the courtroom. Please be seated. Yes, you may approach. Ms. Gentile, we're going to allow you to go home, but I want to remind you that even though you're being excused from the court today, there is a possibility you may be called back to testify. So the subpoena that has been issued requiring you to be at court is still in full force and effect. So if you all are called back to testify, arrangements will be made for you to come back here, and you must be available under that subpoena until you are released by me, okay? You understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, if you'll please follow Corporal Dents out of the courtroom, and when, after that, if we'll get the jury back in.
Judge, before they come in, do we have permission to set the document camera up for insurance?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I use my phone?
Pardon?
Can I use my phone?
As soon as you're out of the courtroom, you can. Okay, is the defense ready for the jury to come back into the courtroom?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring the jury back in.
very private problem.
Please be seated. Mr. Manti, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. This court is called Ray McDonald.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall present will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McDonald, if you would, please go ahead and spell your last name for a court reporter. Tell us who you are, where you work, and what you do.
Okay, first name Raymond, last name MacDonald, M-A-C-D-O-N-A-L-D. And I'm a senior manager at T-Mobile, the wireless phone company.
Where do you operate from?
Our corporate headquarters is in Bellevue, Washington. Our office is in Parsippany, New Jersey.
And when you say our office, which office specifically, which branch or sort of agency of T-Mobile?
I'm with the Law Enforcement Relation Group. We're part of the legal department.
And as part of your duties there, do you have occasion to review, collect, and authenticate records of phone calls for T-Mobile customers?
Yes.
Okay. Are those records normally kept in the course of T-Mobile's business because you, of course, have to bill people?
Yes.
And are they made at or near the time that the calls are documented?
Yes, they are.
So this is sort of your monthly phone bill, and you guys keep all that stuff?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald, I'm showing you what's been marked for, and I think sort of by agreement, sections of phone records for two T-Mobile phones marked currently as States Exhibits 166 and 167. You're familiar with the records reflected in those exhibits?
Yes, I am.
If there's no objection, I would be moving 166 and 167 into evidence.
No objection? No. 166 will come in as 166, as will 167 come in as 167.
Mr. McDonald, if you would please go ahead and tell us sort of how it is that these records get generated. How does T-Mobile get a paper record of a cellular phone call?
When a call is made, as the call goes through the T-Mobile network, on the switches in that network are billing gateways. Those billing gateways capture the information for billing purposes. That information is then sent out to the billing computers where it sits in a digital format until which time it's called upon for whatever need the company has for those records.
The first set of records that I'd like to discuss is one that's affiliated with the phone number, the T-Mobile phone number, area code 407-435-2400. Do you see that in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And which exhibit is that, sir?
This is States Exhibit 167.
Okay. And Mr. McDonald, if I could direct your attention up to the large screen. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to show you a portion of that record. Oh, boy. Here we go. That's better. And I'm going to ask you to tell us sort of what it is that we're looking at here, what kind of columns we're talking about. If I start with the left-hand column, is that the phone number that the records are associated with?
The left-hand column under the heading Misden, which is just a fancy term for the phone number, that is the phone number for the subscriber for those records.
If I'm looking specifically at the records for the 2/26/2012 date, you see that column there with the dates?
Yes.
And then I look in the destination column. I guess I'll start with the very top of that column. That series of numbers there starts with 216. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. What is that column?
That is an IP addressing. It's, all I can tell you, it's some type of IP session, some type of web session. That number, it's IP addressing.
So you're talking about an internet provider?
Yes.
If I go to the next sort of the next word, which is incoming in that column, what is an incoming call?
When you see incoming and the destination, it just simply means that the call is an incoming call, that it came into the subscriber's handset.
Okay. And so if it were a call being made by the subscriber, what would it say?
It will be, you see under the incoming, it will have a destination, like in this case, it will say Sanford, Florida.
Okay. As it does in the next line? Then?
Yes, that would indicate an outgoing call.
Okay. And as for time, is that military time there, sir?
It is.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to move over for a moment to the call type. Tell me what that F means and what that D means over there in that column.
Well, the F is a mobile-to-mobile call. It's a T-Mobile to T-Mobile phone. And when you see a D, that indicates that it's a text message.
And if I go out just a little bit to number of minutes, what is that column designed to measure?
That's the number of minutes for the call.
So the duration of the call?
Duration of the call,
So
yes.
under the time column, is that the start time of the phone call?
Yes, yes it is.
And then the number of minutes tells you how long it lasts?
Yes, we bill out to the minute. So it's, if you see the first one is 3 minutes, that would be anything between 2 and 3 minutes.
So let me guess, you round it up?
Yes.
As far as T-Mobile phones go, in your familiarity with their records, as far as the clock, the time that a call starts, unless the phone is altered in some way by the user, are all the T-Mobile phones going to use the same time?
The phones, if they're an auto time, then they would pick up the time for the area that they're in. Of course, most phones, people can set their own time on the phones also.
Okay. Now tell me about text messages and times.
Text messaging, the timestamp for text messaging is in Pacific time because it's default routing, and it picks up default routing, and it picks up Pacific time for the timestamp.
So if I look there, for example, the first D column I see for text message says incoming text message at 2014. Does that mean that the text message actually arrived at 8:14 p.m. Eastern time or Pacific time?
That would be Pacific time, and you just add the 3 hours for Eastern time.
Okay, so that text would actually arrive in the phone at 23:14 instead of 2014?
Yes.
If the phone were in the Eastern time zone?
Yes.
To determine the length in seconds of the phone call, do you have to actually measure the recording itself and time it? In other words, you say, for example, if I look at the third call up there, the incoming call that says 3 minutes, you said that could last anywhere actually between 2 and 3 minutes. Would I have to actually time the phone call itself to get to the actual seconds?
With looking at these records, this type of billing format, yes.
Okay. And the same would be true of all the calls in that column?
Yes, with the exception of text messaging, it's going to show a 1. That's more or less a placeholder. It'll usually always show a 1 or a 0.
Okay. So I see 2 calls that I just want to direct your attention to in particular. One at 19:08. Do you see that one?
Yes, I do.
So that would be made at 7:08 p.m. and I think the column indicates that that lasts 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. And then there's a second one at 1918 that lasts 1, and both of those calls are made to 407-688-5070.
Yes, they're both outgoing calls to that number.
When you see a 1 in the number of minutes, does that mean that there actually was any conversation, or could it simply mean that there was a call and then a connection and an immediate hang-up?
In order for it to come on to these building records, there would have to be some type of connection. I couldn't tell you what that connection is, but a connection on the other end.
All right. And as long as there's 1 second of connection, it's going to show a minute. Am I
Yes.
right? Because you get a bill for it, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move, if I could, not yet. You're good at 166. And now in looking at these records, I'm going to start, I guess, let me do it this way. If I look over to the left-hand column, that number I see there, 17863129558, what is that number?
That is that would be the number for these records. That would be the number of the subscriber for these records.
Okay, so that's the phone number.
Yes.
If I ask you the second column there that says voice, what does that mean?
That's the type of activity. It may say voice, it may say SMS, which short message service, it's a text message, or you may see data in there also.
Okay. And the third column, where we have a date, what appears to be a time, including seconds, what is that column?
That is the date and time of the call, or the activity of the phone.
And incoming and outgoing, does that mean the same thing as it did in 167?
Yes.
All right. As far as the next column where I see another long number, what does that column signify?
That would be the phone number that is either calling to the subscriber number or the subscriber is calling to.
Okay. And TMO US, I can bet that stands for T-Mobile.
T-Mobile US, yes.
Okay. If I look at the last column, actually the last 2 columns over here, what do those columns signify in terms of, I'm going to ask duration for minutes and then durations for seconds?
Yes, these are the first column, second from the right to the left. That's your time of the call or activity in seconds, and it's actually rounded out, in minutes, and the seconds are rounded out in hundredths of a minute.
All right, so the far right column is seconds and the
Yes.
second to the right column is in minutes?
Yes.
And again, you're rounding up?
Yes.
So if I were to, for example, look at the highlighted call, which is the first highlighted call, 2/26/2012 at 7:12:06 p.m., does that tell me that that is an incoming phone call to this phone that connected at 7:12 and 6 seconds on the evening of February 26, 2012?
Yes.
Okay. And the phone number that called that phone is 786-419-3726?
Yes, that's correct.
And that phone call lasted 218 seconds or 3.63 minutes?
Yes.
The very first call on this sheet, it's not highlighted, but it shows a connection time of what, sir?
6:54 and 16 seconds p.m.
Okay, and it's that same phone number that ends in 3726?
Yes.
And it is for 17.53 minutes?
Yes.
Let me ask you, the second highlighted call here, and in fact every call thereafter, where we alternate incoming, outgoing, all the way down the page?
Yes.
Okay. Beginning with that second highlighted call, it looks like it is 43 seconds or 0.72 minutes.
Yes,
Can
that's
you
correct.
tell me what these records indicate to you as far as the nature of that call and why we see alternated incoming and outgoing all the way?
Well, starting on 2/26/2012 at 7:16 PM and 24 seconds, you have the incoming call from 786-419-3726. And under that, you see it appears to say outgoing to a 1-805-637-7249. That 805 number is our voicemail platform. T-Mobile's one of the voicemail platforms. So what you're seeing is the 3726 number is calling into the subscriber's number. It's not being answered, and it's dropping the voicemail. The reason it would appear to be an outgoing call, where it says outgoing, is as a call drops into voicemail, the phone pushes that call over to voicemail. So on the records, it gives an indication of an outgoing call, but it's just going to voicemail.
So after the call at 7:12:06 PM gets disconnected, is every call thereafter go straight to voicemail?
To the bottom of that page, yes, that's what's happening.
Thank you, Honor. Judge, I have no... Your Honor, thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you. Mr. O'Mara, are you going to need the lights on or off?
On for now. I may not need the records. So we're clear on the first call that we looked at. That was more of a truncated or a smaller amount of data was actually identified on that first record that we have. Didn't have the exact minutes and seconds, for example, correct?
You mean the first set of call records we looked
Yes.
at? Yes,
Yes,
that's
sir.
correct.
If I might. I'm not going to encourage you, but we're talking about the one that was on here.
Yes.
Right? Any reason why we don't have the detail on this one that you're able to show on this one?
It's just depends upon the application that's being utilized when the records are pulled. The first set of records is a different application. The second set of records, when we have certain requests, we'll go to that application to pull those records.
Sure. You could have been asked to bring these same records for the first number, right?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
You just didn't. You were only asked by the state to bring the, I'm not diminishing it, but the more generic or less specific numbers for the first record that we reported or you testified about than you did for the second one, correct?
It would appear that way, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Of course, had you been asked similar records for both, there were more specific detail, you would have brought them?
Sure.
Okay. Talking about the first phone call then for just a minute, we noticed that there were two phone calls. There was one for, I think, 3 minutes and one for 1 minute. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. That would be like if I called the number right now, was on the phone for 3 minutes, put the phone back, maybe I was nervous or something had happened to me, and I dialed and it pushed again. As long as it connected to that second call for even a second, it would show up as a minute, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Yes.
You don't document that there was a conversation that second time, do you?
No, I can only say by looking at the records that there was a connection, but not what the connection was.
Sure. And as to the second, more detailed records that we just had you testify concerning, it seems as though, from this report, there are the phone calls that he had you focus on, that he highlighted, correct?
Yes.
One lasted about almost 4 minutes, 3.63 minutes, correct?
Yes.
Is there a reason why you do minutes and seconds? I just have to ask. Why you have minutes and then you also have a column for seconds?
That's the way the application
Just
pulls the
the-
information.
Just a great
Yes.
computer telling us that?
Yes.
Okay. So there were those two phone calls that I think you testified did in fact connect because we know the timing of them, correct?
Yes.
But then we go down the list, and you can tell by outgoing is when it kicks it automatically over to a voicemail.
If I see a call coming in ahead of the 805 number, which is one of our voicemail platform numbers.
Right.
And yes, I can determine that call dropped into voicemail.
Right, because if I'm calling this number, then you see the next thing is outgoing from that call, because that phone has basically called over to voicemail.
Pushed it to voicemail.
Push it.
Yes.
Okay. And then there are a number of those lasting, I know you don't have this in front of you, lasting 20 seconds, 27 seconds, 7 seconds, 7 seconds. That's just whatever the length of the then voicemail is, correct?
Yes.
Or whatever the connection delay time is, and then the message being left on voicemail?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Just wondering, as far as getting a more detailed set of records or something, do those records have to be ordered within a certain time frame of their creation or their loss?
The records, the second set of records, because of the information that it contains, we only maintain those for a period of 6 months in the system.
So if they were asked for within 6 months of that time, you could have given us to them, but anything after that, you couldn't?
Yes, that's correct.
Another question, John.
No, sorry, just because I thought I knew it, now I'm confused. Which records do you only keep for 6 months?
The ones on your left, my right.
Okay, so this one, the more detailed one, you only keep for 6 months?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Any further questions?
No, Your Honor, I'd ask you to be excused.
Thank you, Any objections?
No.
Mr. McDonald, you may be excused. Thank you very much, sir. Call your next witness, please.
Then we call Jennifer Lauer.